So in this video, I'd like to give an overview of all of the gear in Counterside, where to obtain them, what are they good for, and what are the main features of each gear type. So let's start with the early game gear. These are craftable gears. They are also dropped randomly in all sorts of stages within Counterside. So these are not particularly good gears. They're more budget options or sort of entry level into transitioning from the mid game to the end game. So these are sort of temporary gears. At this point, since the gear itself doesn't give a lot of stats, the set bonus is more important at this point. So then let's move on to the raid gear. These are gotten from drops from raids as well as crafting them from the resources you get from raids. They're the little coins. There's actually two of them. They're super conductive, gotten from Brita, the Thunder Peel, and Polymer gear, gotten from the Inhibitor, which as of this recording is not yet in global, but at some point you will get it. These two raid gears are slightly better than the Dante gears or the early game gears that we discussed before, but they're not quite as good as the next one we will discuss. The substats that are given by the superconductive gears, that's the Brita gear, is crit damage. It's only useful for certain units such as Shaolin and Jane Doe, which have guaranteed crits within their kit. The Polymer gear gives resistance to a specific unit type being Counter Soldier Mech. So this makes it more niche as a defensive option. A little side note, the T7 gears you get from raids is different. I know that's a bit confusing because they're from the same source, but we'll discuss T7 gears later. So let's move on to the big one, which are Maze gear, Gordias gear, and Hummingbird. As of the time of this recording, Hummingbird is not yet in global, but once we get Danger Close, I think it's in June, then we'll get Hummingbird. So Maze, Gordias, and Hummingbird are obtained from different shops. The Gauntlet shop has some of them, as well as the Challenge shop has one of them. There are also drops within the challenge stages itself, and as I've said, Danger Close will have some of them. So there is a finite amount of them per account. So if you've already obtained all of them, you cannot gain more. In fact, obtaining all of the Maze, Gordias, and Hummingbird is one of the long-term goals in an account. Maze gears are the offensive gears, and they give you anti-ground damage, which is bonus damage on any unit on the ground, except for the armor. Gordias and Hummingbird are the defensive gears, and they provide you with anti-ranged or anti-melee damage. You might have seen the set Humagorgor, which is Hummingbird weapon, Maze armor, and Gordias accessories. So it's at this point where the substat that the gear provides is more beneficial than the set bonus. However, you still eventually want a beneficial set bonus. In fact, Skill Haste, which is one of the most important stats for counter type units, you want to stack it as much as you can so you get it both on the set bonus as well as the substats. Maze gears, Gordias gears, and Hummingbird gears are sort of where you spend all your binaries that everyone has told you to save up and not use. Now, which set bonuses and substats to roll for is a completely different discussion. I'll link some videos that go more in depth to which sets to go for in the description. But the big one is a full CDR or Skill Haste set for counters. So now let's move on to Shadow Palace gears. At the time of this recording, Global has not gotten Shadow Palace, but it'll come eventually. Shadow Palace gears are sort of alternatives to the Maze gears. The subset that they give you is anti a specific role, so anti-defender, anti-striker, anti-sniper, etc. But unlike Maze gears, you can continuously craft Shadow Palace gears. so they're a good alternative to Maze. Shadow Palace gears also have a completely different set of bonuses. They have Spectral Blaze, Spectral Bullet, Spectral Chain. These are all sort of offensive set bonuses and they provide attack. But the main feature of Shadow Palace gears is the anti-roll damage that they give from the substats. As for exclusive equipment on each of the characters, once you can get from the counter case by leveling up that character, later on we'll get challenge stages where we get resources to just craft them, although the crafting is still RNG. It really depends on the equipment and the particular character in question. I know that Shaolin, Gaian, and Kyle's exclusive equipment are good, but while Gaian and Kyle, you still want them to roll into CDR, so again, they're lower priority than just Maze gear, because Maze gear you can move around and they're not limited to just one character. So now, the seasonal gears, which are Loyal, Devoted, Courageous, and Sincere. The TLDR is they're just lower priority than T6, Maze, Gordias, or Hummingbird. The seasonal gears are obtained from the Gauntlet shop, and when they first appear, they'll have a 50% discount, and then once the season is done, they'll be more expensive. But do not get baited, it's still priority to buy all the Maze and Gordias gears. The stats you get from them are actually very similar to T6 Maze and Gordias. The only difference is that Loyal and Courageous give you anti-counter or anti-soldier or anti-mech, while Devoted and Sincere give you resistance to those unit types, so anti-counter damage resistance. So they're a lot more niche than Maze, which just gives you anti-ground damage or the defensive stats that Gordias gives you. You can specialize a unit in order to specifically counter a unit type, like counters. So now let's discuss the T7 gears. These are gears with this symbol, and they have the latent ability system. So how the system works is you upgrade the gear, you enhance it, and then you unlock the latent abilities at level 2, 5, and 7. However, the system has 2 layers of RNG, which stat it gives you and how much of that stat. And once you've unlocked it, you cannot reroll the latent ability. You have to craft a new piece of gear. So this is why it's highly suggested that you work on your T6 Maze, Gorgeous, and Hummingbird sets before you move on to fiddling with the latent abilities of T7 gears. So just a disclaimer, I don't have a lot of experience with the T7 gears just because they're actually new to the C server and I'm still working on Maze and Gordias there. So everything I know is from the Pridewen guide, and links in the description if you want to read more. So far, there are 3 groups of T7 gears. There is the Swift gear, which are from the Relic Dungeons, again, not in Global yet. And then there are the 2 raid gears, the Brita T7 and the Inhibitor T7. Swift Relic gears are sort of the early game T7 gears, as their stats are not quite as high. If you roll enough stats, they can be used as alternatives or complements to already existing Maze gear, but because of all the RNG, you still want to have the Maze gears first. As for T7 Brita, it's the offensive one out of the T7 gears. It can roll specifically into melee damage or range damage, and the second substat can be rolled into anti-ground damage. So the Brita gears are sort of, it gives you a lot of raw stats, but it's not as good as getting skill haste. Lastly, the T7 Inhibitor gears. They are the defensive one among the T7 gears. Their latent ability can roll into melee damage resistance or range damage resistance. And also, like other defensive gears, crit damage resistance, while not unique to the T7 Inhibitor, is also viable. So, that was a video. Right now, I am showing the TLDR of all the things we've discussed. I know it's a lot, and I actually cut out a lot of other more detailed information just to keep the video concise. And like I said, I'll be putting other videos and resources in the description if you want to read more. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'll try to answer as much as I can. And if you made it this far in the video, hey, thank you for watching.